A lot of people, myself included, often say that Tesla don't build the best cars, but they build the best electric cars by far. And whether that's true or not, I want to take some time to actually evaluate if that's enough. Because there are still a lot of kind of complexities and hurdles that comes with owning and driving an EV that I think still renders it a bit too complex for wider adoption, so we need to see some progress there. I'm Linus, this is Outdoor EV Adventures, and I have an assistant with me today. I'm dog sitting my friend's dog Alma, who you might see running around here and there or throw out some food for her to do some nose work, so she might be coming in and out of the shot. Oh, hello Alma. Just to give some separation between the topics that we're going to be talking about, I divided my notes into the driving experience, the ownership experience, the control experience, and the cabin experience. And now I probably said them in the wrong order, but we'll go through each of them individually. So starting off with the driving experience, with the negatives, and starting off with the driver assistance, where in Teslas you have autopilot or the adaptive cruise control. And then of course you have different flavors of autopilot. You have the basic, enhanced autopilot, and full self-driving. I've only ever owned the basic version, so that's what I'm going to be talking about today. But in Sweden at least, or in Europe, if you have the enhanced autopilot or full self-driving, and it's not that big of a difference. You get auto lane change, auto park and summon, but overall the experience is quite similar. So one of the biggest pet peeves for me is that adaptive cruise control or autopilot forces auto high beams and auto wipers on. I have a LED bar mounted to my car, so if it starts turning auto high beam on and off, it's not, and you have the adaptive lights active, it's not going to turn the LED bar off, so I'm going to be blinding people. So every time I activate autopilot or adaptive cruise control, I have to turn the auto high beams off. And the auto wipers, it's quite common knowledge now, but they are pretty bad. On Tesla you can be driving in pouring rain and the sensor doesn't react at all, or you can be on a dry, sunny, nice day like today and they start going crazy for no apparent reason because the cameras picked something up. I don't know why they don't just get a proper rain sensor that's been around for a really long time, and Alma is peeing now. Autopilot goes crazy every now and then. I mean, you have phantom braking that a lot of people are reporting, that the car just randomly brakes when you're on just a straight stretch of road for no apparent reason. I've had a few pretty scary experiences where I've been, especially here in the Nordics, in Sweden and Norway, we have pretty narrow roads where you have the opposing traffic with no barrier or nothing in between. And especially when you meet trucks and stuff like that, I've experienced that the car thinks that the truck is heading straight towards you, so it brakes really hard and swerves, so it's almost trying to pull you off the road. And now there's a car coming, so I'm gonna have a little break.
Kom down.
And there's also the aspect of the variable force to disengage autopilot. I don't know, if you don't know, you can disengage autopilot by either pulling the stock up, or on the newer ones that don't have the stocks, you push the button on the steering wheel, or you can apply some force, or you brake a little bit. And sometimes you just want to use the force of the steering wheel to take it off for one reason or another. And that force kind of varies a little bit. Let's see how much it takes. I'm applying quite a lot of force now, and then I apply enough to cause a little whoop, a little wiggle. If I'm behind the car on a two-lane highway and I'm coming at a higher speed and I'm swapping lanes to go past them, even if I have the blinker on, I'm actively leaving the lane, the autopilot or adaptive cruise control will actually brake for the car in front of me, even if I'm leaving that lane. Super annoying. So I'm behind the car that's going 90 in a 100 zone, and if I just turn on the blinkers, I have the cruise control active. It doesn't accelerate, it actually braked a little bit, and now it's accelerating as soon as it's in the 100% clear lane. Also, there is no autopilot light when you're towing. I think that would be a nice addition. I assume they don't have any autopilot functionality when you're towing because of the irregularities in how autopilot behaves. But it would be so nice just to have lane centering light or something like that, just to help you out on long towing trips. And lastly, the lane departure warning I think is too sensitive on narrow roads. We have tons of those up here in Northern Europe. So quite often I'm just leaving some room for another car, and the car starts blaring and applies corrective steering. That can be a bit scary. Hello. Have you calmed down a bit now? Alma is on the table now. Since a couple of years ago, you don't have control over the regen amount when you let go of the accelerator pedal. On older models or older software, you could put it to low, which was pretty nice in winter or in slippery conditions. That's no longer an option without third-party accessories like the sexy buttons that come from, you probably have seen them around. I also just think that the turn signal behavior is a bit inconsistent. Sometimes they turn off for no apparent reason when you gave them a full activation, stuff like that. It's just like minor nuisances when you're driving. And every now and then the headlights readjust themselves whenever they feel like it because you're parked on a sloped surface or something like that. So I've had a couple of occasions where I start driving at night and I can see that my headlights are basically pointing up. And then they correct after a few minutes, but up until that point you're going to be blinding everyone that you're facing or driving behind. And also the navigation doesn't really learn from the current driving configuration. I mean, it adapts to weather, wind, it takes some of your previous driving into consideration. This is also something that has been fixed in the recent spring update that's rolling out that I don't have in my car yet, but the distance and trip estimations are supposedly improved where it takes into account the consumption over the past couple of 100 miles or whatever, and it kind of adjusts gradually. So if you're driving a longer trip with a trailer, I would assume that it would recalculate the trip estimations in a way better manner than it does today. I think the car is too complex to just hand over to someone. If I'm lending someone my car and they have never driven electric or a Tesla before, it feels like I have to have a 3-minute mini lecture or 5-minute about things that you don't expect to need to know about the car that you're borrowing. I mean, you learn, it's not too complex, but still cautioning them about the odd behaviors that can happen, like phantom braking or whatever it might be. Second last on my list is there is no 360 camera view yet for some reason. Teslas have cameras everywhere, it would be nice to have 360 when you're parking. And Tesla Vision nerfed parking assist. So I have one of the crossover models that still has the old parking sensors. And when they rolled out Tesla Vision, they just disabled those. And I've seen a lot of posts in Facebook groups and forums about people having kind of scary experiences with Tesla Vision. It's not as accurate, and it has a hard time dealing with the conditions that are in winter. It gets covered in mud and snow and shit, and the cameras can't really see that much. So let's move on to the positives of the driving experience. Teslas are fun to drive. Electric cars are fun to drive typically. They're fast, they're quick, they're nimble. I think the pedal calibration on the Teslas are great. I've driven quite a few different electric vehicles and a lot of them have pedals that don't really feel intuitive. And I mean, if you own those cars, you get used to it and it doesn't really bother you. But when you jump in between cars like that, it's quite obvious that Tesla has good calibration. I also find that the all-wheel drive is really, really good. I never gotten stuck, and I've been driving in a lot of suboptimal conditions, going up steep hills on bare ice or really deep snow. Never gotten stuck with my Tesla Model Y or my Model 3 before that, for that matter. I also think that adaptive cruise control and autopilot are great in the right conditions, and they save you a lot of mental energy on long trips because you just don't have to do all the micro adjustments like keeping yourself in the lane or adjusting the speed to the conditions or having, the micro adjustments with your foot just to keep the speed. Alma is getting bored. I hope you're not. Also, Tesla has the best route planning in any EV I've ever seen or tested, even though I wish I could have some more control to set like a desired minimum charge at arrival for the chargers, like some of the apps, like a better route planner. Sit. Yeah, I know, there's another dog. The cameras are great, but they get dirty real easy in winter, especially the rear camera. And I wish there was just some way that it had some little nozzle just to clean it off every now and then, or at least heat it, so if it's covered in ice and snow that it melts off. Of course, the supercharger network with plug and charge, super convenient. It's almost everywhere and it's very reliable. And I think that the headlights are fairly decent, at least the newest ones with the adaptive headlights activated, the matrix functionality, whatever you call it. And that wraps it up for the driving experience. We're going to go over to the cabin experience. I'm just going to get Alma to get rid of some steam. Or is it chill now? You are so cute. Would you like some food instead? Ooh, yes. I can bribe you. All right, moving on to the actual cabin experience and starting with the negatives again. I think the seats are too high, especially the driver's seat. I can't get it far enough down. I'm a tall guy. Oh, yes, you'll get one more over there. I'm a tall guy, and that means that I'm higher up than I want to be, and the rear view mirror is on like a little telescope coming down, so it's blocking quite a lot of my view. So I need to kind of look around it and down and look like a boxer sometimes when I'm trying to see what's going on around me, or in front of me in this case. I also think a lot of the time that the A-pillars are a bit too thick. They block a lot of your front vision. I've had occasions where I'm driving towards a roundabout and there's a car that's like perfectly aligning with my A-pillar, and I have to lean back and forth to get a full sense of what's in front of me. The back seats don't fold fully flat. At least there is no like gap or ridge or anything, so it's okay to sleep on, but they fold at like an 8-9 degree angle. So when you're sleeping in the car, I try to always park it so the car is facing down a little bit, so I get the bed as flat as possible. Here you go, more bribes. Something that hasn't happened to me, but I've seen so many people talk about it, is that you get rocks in the rear vents under the front seats, the vents that are shooting air towards the back seat row, that you get rocks in there and they scramble around, and there's no sensible way to get them out without disassembling the car, I guess. I also think the climate control can act unpredictably sometimes. I changed the sensors in my car when it was new because the AC was really poor at keeping the correct temperature. But sometimes it's really cold outside, you want to get warm and the car is warm and the whole system is warm, but then you put your hand up to the vent and it's shooting out cold air for no apparent reason, and it does stuff like that every now and then. And then kind of related to build quality, but there is some random rattling that comes and goes and is really annoying. I'm really sensitive to rattles and those types of noises. So that in and of itself is just annoying. And it's hard to find it, especially if you're driving yourself and you hear something like somewhere. It's really hard to pinpoint where it is to try and go there and solve it. There's a bird on the camera. I made videos about this, but the fact that the 12 volt doesn't work in Sentry mode or keep climate on anymore is terrible, I think. I use it a lot for camping. I keep an active cooler in the car all the time when I'm traveling around or doing these like longer trips when I'm sleeping in the car. And the fact that they remove that, I think, is a proper bummer. In a recent update that I haven't gotten yet for my car, a spring update of 2025, they fixed the 12 volt and USB-C power setting. So you're supposed to be able to go into the settings and choose to keep the auxiliary power on when you leave the car, which as we're heading into summer, it's great. Moving on to the positives of the cabin experience, I think the seats are really comfy. I wish they were ventilated, of course, but overall, it's a good seating experience. You have cup holders, wireless chargers, storage in front, as well as USB-C outlets, both in the front and back. I think the sound system is okay, plus it's fine. I've been meaning to get a hold on a measuring microphone and some software to go there and actually measure out the frequency response of the sound system and tweak it accordingly, but that will be a future video. But for all intents and purposes, I think the sound system is A-OK. The phone system as well, good enough. I think you hear people that you're on the phone with good enough, and they seem to be hearing you good enough as well. There's a lot of storage space. I mean, this is true for a lot of electric vehicles, but not all of them. But you have the frunk, the subspace in the trunk, and the car just swallows so much more cargo than you think when you look at it from the outside. And then preconditioning, or the entire app experience, but the fact that I can precondition the car from my phone means that I've almost forgotten what it's like to get into a cold car in the winter time. And then lastly, one of the positives with the cabin experience is camp mode. I've been spending so many nights in the car, and having that option, I think, is just a great thing from Tesla. But now I really need to untie Alma from, she's been running around trees and making knots of herself. Moving into the control experience of owning a Tesla. I think starting with the negatives, the UI keeps getting updated, but the elements keep getting smaller and smaller and have less and less contrast, which is a bummer, I think. It just makes it harder to manage when you're driving. You want to look at the screen as little as possible, And while the UI is getting prettier, it's getting harder to engage with when you're driving and trying to do stuff at a glance. There are some driving essentials you might want to change when you're driving that are hidden a bit too deep, like changing the dim setting for the mirrors, some of the light settings and stuff like that. I think overall, quite a poor use of the screen real estate on the screen. I realized there are a lot of different models and different initiatives happening at Tesla, but I think that the entire screen real estate could be utilized in a better way to provide more clarity, especially when driving or trying to operate some of the functions when you're driving. In my experience, it's been really hard to add additional drivers. Never got it to work, actually, so I end up giving them a key card or something if they're borrowing my car. There is also the thing that you can't have another keyboard language than the system language in your car. So I keep my car in English, which I do for most of my electronics for some reason, but especially for my car because I'm filming YouTube content, and then it's easier if everything is in English and not in Swedish. But in the new spring update that I don't have in my car, you're going to be able to choose the language for your keyboard. So I can keep my car system in English and finally have a keyboard in Swedish instead of having to long press the A and O to get the Swedish letters Å, Ä and Ö. And then it's the scheduled charging and preheating, which is, for some reason, so confusing in the Tesla app and in the car. So, for instance, if I'm going on a trip tomorrow, I want to be able to set my charge limit to 100%. I know I'm leaving at 9 a.m. So I want to say finish charging by 9 a.m. Good night, car. See you tomorrow. But the way it is it's set up so that you can set like a preheating time and then a time to start charging. But in order to know when you need to start charging, I typically start charging and set the limit to 100% to see the time estimate, and maybe it says like 3.5 hours to 100%. And then I know I need to count backwards from 9 a.m. So I need to start the charging at 6:30 in the morning. And I don't know, sometimes I've gotten down to the car and it's at 90% for some reason. Maybe I miscalculated or the estimations were off. I don't know, just let me set like I'm leaving at that time, make sure the car is fully charged and preheated or charged to my charge limit setting. Now, if we move on to the positives of the control experience, I think it's still better than any other manufacturer as far as I know and that I've driven. There is something that you just can't get away from, and that's that, older cars without all the electronics are just easier to operate in general. You start the car, you have knobs and buttons for everything, and it's just kind of intuitive, and it's something, well, a lot of us have grown up with for decades and decades. But as far as electric vehicles goes, I think Tesla are still number one on that leaderboard. And then there's the fact that you have the app to control a lot of things in the car, which is great. I mean, for me, it's to the extent where I've almost forgotten what it's like to get into a cold car or a car that's too hot. And the ability to engage Sentry mode or see if I forgot to close a door or a window. And just having that control, and it works for me at least like 99.6% of the time. I've had a few hiccups where it's like the car doesn't really wake up and they can't communicate. I know some people have had a lot of problems with that. For me, it's only happened a handful of times over my, 5, 6, 7 years of driving Teslas. I feel like a child sitting on this bench, like swinging my legs. Moving on to the ownership experience and starting with the negatives. I think just a massive thing for me. I don't really know what it's like with other car brands, but dealing with Tesla service can be such a frustrating, mind-boggling pain in the butt. There is a lack of consistency, and sometimes seemingly bizarre policies come to life with no explanation, no warning ahead of time or anything. And it can be anything from like, the lower control arms on the older Tesla Model S's are cracking at low speeds when people are turning. And it happened to lots and lots and lots and lots of Tesla Model S's. And Tesla kept saying, no, it's user error or it's not a warranty or whatever. And then suddenly they flip and they say like, the lower control arm is under dimensioned or whatever. And they will take full warranty responsibility for it. We also have getting a loaner if you hand your car in. Sometimes it's hard to know when the car will be done. Will there be a loaner? They can't really tell you ahead of time. And recently, at least here in the Nordics, in Sweden and Norway, they increased the... what is the English word? The självrisk. I'll put it on the screen. The självrisk. If you're in an accident with a loaner, it's upwards of like 25,000 Swedish or Norwegian crowns, which is like $2,500 or euros-ish. It's also stuff like, what chemicals you use when you wash your car, and that might be the reason that your brake lights have cracked, which a lot of Model 3 and Model Y owners have had problems with. And it's like, where is this specification? Oh, it's somewhere in the manual, but people are using, mostly reasonable chemicals. So it's kind of hard to believe. The same thing that, I don't know if this is occurring anymore, but back in the day at least, people would get refused warranty service because they had third-party rims on their car. And it could be like, oh, my AC broke. Yeah, but it's you have third-party rims, so it doesn't go under warranty. What? And also in my experience, I think the customer experience has been pretty poor in the service centers. Like, I guess they meet a lot of angry people coming in there. I think I'm pretty nice. I'm pretty forthcoming. I'm like, hey, I'm here to hand in my car. And you just get this like, I don't know, a lot of times I felt treated like a piece of garbage, basically, with being met with skepticism and yeah, I don't know. And for me, who's living in Sweden, it's not very good service coverage here. We don't have a lot of service centers, especially in the north where I am. So the closest thing for me is to drive to Norway or Trondheim. I guess to a certain extent that's the same for a lot of car brands, even though they have like licensed repair shops. It's also true for a lot of other cars as well, of course, but if stuff breaks that's not covered under warranty or you're outside of warranty, it can get really, really expensive really, really fast. And then there's also the fact that the Tesla keep making changes with no heads up. It's like suddenly the pricing, goes up or down like $15,000-$20,000 or euros. Or Spotify Premium was removed about a year ago, and there was this whole like back and forth with if you have free charging on an old vehicle, you can move it to a new one, and then suddenly it was time limited, and then they stopped doing it, and then some people couldn't do it. And the same with extended autopilot and full self-driving. People who invested when they bought maybe their first car and they have FSD, but they can't transfer it if they want to buy a new one. And then for a period they could. I don't know what the status is now, but it's just like back and forth, and it's hard to navigate and just causes unnecessary friction in the ownership experience. And then there's also the fact, like the biggest frustration for me is functions that keep disappearing and reappearing, like the 12-volt power outlets and USB-C in Sentry mode. It's been gone now for about a year, and now it's coming back in the spring update. In the early versions of cars, or like the early versions of the software, you could choose the amount of regen you wanted when you lifted your foot off the juice pedal. For me, you get used to it eventually, but it comes back to the fact that like if I'm lending out a car to someone and they're not used to it, and it's winter and it's icy and slippery outside, and they are used to like, oh, maybe it's slippery, and they just lift their foot, high risk of them like starting to swerve or lose control of the car. Just let drivers choose how much regen they want. And then also like the forced auto wipers and auto high beam on adaptive cruise control and autopilot. My goodness, it's so frustrating. And then there's also the fact that you can only request service via the app. That's fine, I think, most of the time, but it's also like I'm a millennial, so I don't like writing on my phone. And sometimes you need to like explain longer things in like small text boxes on your phone. I just find it kind of frustrating. I would prefer to be able to go like have the option to go on the website and book a service so I can write on a keyboard. Maybe that's just me, but I'm calling it now. I think a lot of you that are watching this are going to agree with me. And then it's also so freaking annoying to swap the cabin filters. On most cars, is this true? I think so. You just kind of unlatch the glove box, and then it's behind there, you pull it out, and then you can swap it out. Here it's like you need to remove an entire panel, and you need not special tools, but you need something to pry with and get in there and like swap them out. And you're like crawling on the floor of of the front seat. I don't know, it just feels silly. It should be easier. And then it's the fact that the original accessories from Tesla, I think they're silly expensive. The roof racks, like mattress and whatnot. I don't know, it just feels overpriced. But that's probably true for most other car brands out there. And then for me, Sentry Mode has been quite unreliable for quite some time. Where for me, whenever I go grocery shopping, I typically turn on Sentry Mode. And many occasions where I've parked with no cars beside me, I come back to the car, there are cars parked on both sides with driver doors facing my car, so there has been movement, like first of all a car pulling in and then someone getting out of the car, and there are no Sentry Mode clips, and I don't know why. And sometimes there are, for seemingly like random reasons. It's not even someone parking next to my car, it's maybe someone like walking by 5-10 meters in front of it. It just seems unreliable and weird. And then I think I have to mention the current political landscape in the US as well. Without getting into it, I know that a lot of people in the US and Sweden as well have gotten their cars vandalized because they are Teslas, because of what's happening in American politics. I've had someone write profanities in the dirt of my rear window, so I guess I've been a victim of this as well. And I think it's just for any brand really, or any type of product you're using, it's kind of scary when it's so heavily connected to one individual. Like what Elon Musk is doing heavily affects the brand and to a certain extent kind of the life of the Tesla owners. Same thing goes for Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook and Meta. And you have a few of those that are like so heavily ingrained with the brand itself. But there are some positives as well as far as the ownership experience goes. It's really easy to buy. You go on the website, you pick your model, do you want all-wheel drive, like long range or performance, you pick a color, pick some rims, and then you're basically good to go. When you compare that to going into, you know, every now and then I go on to like the Porsche website and maybe I spec out a Macan EV, and you have like 14 pages of options and every option kind of interacts with another option, and it's just overwhelming, I think, at least. The referral system, I guess it's good to have. I haven't gotten any yet. Link in the description. You also have the upgrades available in the app if you want to give your car a performance boost or something like that. I guess that's a good ownership experience. A bigger one is that there are lots and lots of third-party accessories. There are so many Teslas on the road, and they're so standardized in terms of model years that a lot of companies are producing different types of accessories, whether it's mattresses or sunshades or whatever you want. There is so much on the third-party market. And then another positive is Sentry Mode. It saved me once. There was a hit and run on my car outside of my office when I lived in Norway, and the alarm and Sentry Mode went off. The guy who had hit me walked out of his car and looked at my car, and then he drove off. But then I had, you know, a picture of him and the license plate and everything, so I could make an insurance claim, and everything worked out smoothly. And last but not least, it's very low maintenance cost until something breaks. Have I done anything to my car that has cost money? I've driven like almost 50,000 kilometers at this point. Other than like wheel alignment and wheel rotation, I don't think I've done a single thing that has cost me money that would count as a service or maintenance. I mean, I'll wash it, but you should do that with any car. That's it. Long video, lots of points. I probably missed a bunch of stuff, so do you disagree or heavily agree with me on something, or did I miss something completely? Let me know in the comments, because I'm kind of curious. I think it's an interesting aspect to look into, because a lot of the time you hear about maybe the driving experience exclusively, or some people that are really into racing or whatever it is. But getting an understanding of how the entire ownership experience is, I think it's really valuable. That's it. Thank you for watching, and you know, if you like this type of content, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.